Alright, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been doing a series of video presentations for the Rankin Technical College AWD Application and Web Development 1111 .NET Framework with Web Databases class. And right now I'm going through our textbook for the class, ASP.NET with Entity Framework and CSS by Naylor. I am in the middle of Chapter 6 of 18. And we are getting to where we're going to be adding images to our application. And as mentioned when I finished up the last presentation, the author says to keep things simple, we're going to use HTML select controls to allow users to pick images to add to a product. There will be 5 of these per product. And the author adds that in a production system, this may not work or this may not be the best way. So, the first thing to do is to add a view model rather than relying on the view bag to pass the data. So add a new class named product to view model to the view model folder. Let's close some of this. So we now have product view model and product index view model. And next we are told we should go in and update the code for the new class as follows. So let's put in these using statements. We may have those or many of them already anyway, but that's all right. All right. So in here in our product view model, let's put in all the guts, so to speak, that they show there, and then we'll go back and take a look at what it all means. Well, that was not a great start. Let's just go up to this point right here. Oh, that's pretty ugly. We'll have to pretty that up in just a second. Alright, so let's do that right now. As you can see, we've got a lot of mistakes in here. There's our ID. Alright, we're going to come in here and add some data annotations, as you can tell. Again, we'll go back and look at each one of these in just a couple moments. Now I'm doing more separation than I have to do, but that's not a problem. All right, so we've got an ID followed by a name, and that name cannot be blank. It has a minimum length of 3 and a maximum length of 50. If you put something out of whack in there, it lets you know. All right. It must start with a letter or a number or a dash. Oh, not a dash. Letter or a number. Okay. Let's see. We've got a product description that can't be blank, minimum length of 10, maximum length of 200. Again, made up of letters and numbers only. Okay, allowed to be over multiple lines, so that's the description. Then we've got a price that's between 10 cents and $10,000 of type currency, formatted with currency, and it can only hold numbers and up to 2 decimal places. All right, we also have a category list, an image list, and an array of product images. All right, I think that's pretty much cleaned up. So the author says, I have chosen the duplication pattern for this view model and duplicated the code from the products model for several of the properties and much of the validation. Although duplication involves duplicating code, it allows the two models to act completely independently from one another. That's an important point. Sometimes code duplication is not a bad thing. All right, it's more a necessary thing. It's something you really should have. This model, as it says, differs from the product class because it contains 2 properties of the type select list that are used to hold the categories and the images. The properties category ID and product images will be used as the name of the select lists. Okay. In the view. All right. On the top of page 144, the author says there are various patterns for working with view models and using validation. The main ones are inheritance, where something basically inherits from, so a child inherits from a parent and can either change things from the parent or add new things. Composition, where you've got a model. For an example, if you had an alarm clock, let's say you made a clock, you set up a clock model with hours, minutes, and seconds, and then you made an alarm clock. Well, an alarm clock is a clock. So if part of what you created in the alarm clock was a clock, that would be a composition. And duplication, which is what we just did, duplicating the code. And the author, I like this. This is one of the things I do appreciate about this author. He says there's plenty of opinion around there of the best one to use, and you should consider the circumstances of your particular project before choosing one. In other words, he's not weighing in with his own thoughts, which is probably a good thing. All right, we're going to allow 5 images to be associated with a product. So add a new constant to our constants.cs file. And I believe we can do a save all here and then close a bunch of these things that are open. And I can reopen them again as necessary. And here's our constants.cs file that we created in an earlier lesson, where we have our product image path, our thumbnail path, and the number of page or items per page. So what we're adding to this is the number of product images, 5, which again is going to represent the maximum number, I believe, that we're going to be able to load it or show at once. So there's going to be 5 images maximum that are going to be associated with any product. There that is. We are now going to update the get version of the create method under controller's product controller to use the new view model and add some select lists to be used for displaying the product images. It says here, update the get version of the create as shown. So let's just grab all of it here. So again, we want to go into our products controller in our get. And this is going to be our get version. So in other words, our HTTP get. So under controllers, product controller, again, I like to keep things closed when I can. There we go. Find the get which is right here. Anytime I'm about to go in and change a boatload of code, I like to go back and take a look to make sure what I'm doing is correct. Get products create. Details, product create. There we go. Well, as you can see, there's not much in there right now. And I put that comment in there before, so I'm just going to remove, what do we have here? We're grabbing every bit of it, so copy. And paste. One thing I wish the author would do would be to add, there are several places in here where he adds comments, but I wish he'd add even more comments. All right. So let's take a look. Let's leave that code up here. As it says, the new code creates a new instance of the product's view model, that's right here, named view model, and assigns the select categories to the category list property. It then creates 5 select lists containing all of the product images, that's in here, and adds them to the image list property of the view model. We could have just used one select list, but the author wanted to be able to specify a default value for each select list if the binding process fails in the HTTP post version, as we'll see in just a minute. So the author says here on page 145, before we update the post version, we're going to modify the product create view to show you how this view will now look and the changes it requires. So we want to open up views products create.cshtml and update it, it says there, as follows. All right. So views products create. Right, which brings us to right here. So the author says, first modify the model used at the top. Again, mine won't say Baby Store, mine will say BS2. All right, not Model T, I think that's like this. All right, I don't know how I got that T in there, but I did. Next, update the code that generates the category ID drop-down list to change it to use the drop-down list for helper and assigns it to use the category list property of the view model for the data. Keep the name category ID. We've also updated the label, as this previously contained a way of defining a label rather than a model. Well, I'm going to grab all of this, copy it, find this, the label for the category ID. Looks like that's right here. So I'm going to paste that in. Well, that really got in there and was ugly. I will tell you, if you have not heard me say this before, the time to make these changes like I'm doing right now, the time to do this is when you're putting the stuff in. All right, it's not, oh, I'll go back and change that, pretty it up or whatever later. Don't do that. It's just that this is just my recommendation. All right. Finally, add 5 HTML select statements. It says the revised create should now read as follows. Well, I probably should have grabbed that. So let's just grab this entire thing here. So I'm going to start this from the top. Let's just remove everything that's in here. And I'm trusting that the book is correct in their code. If they're not, I'm going to have to do a lot of replace and repair here. All right, but it's okay. All right. Now, although again I don't have to do this, I'd like to go back and at least somewhat try to, I'm not even going to say pretty this up, but make it look a little bit better. Like I said, hopefully I'm making this better and not worse. So. I'm seeing that I've got some errors down here. At least it looks like I do, so I'm going to try to fix those as well. And these appear to be space errors again, so hopefully these will clear themselves up shortly. Now, I'd be lying if I told you that just taking a quick look at this, as I was putting this in here, I understood what everything in here means. So, let's take a look at what should happen. Alright, it says here, the code displays a drop-down for each member of the image list property and obtains the data for an individual select list. So in other words, we just, for lack of better words, we added the stuff that was in here. Alright, so the new product create HTML page with the 5 select list elements to allow the user to choose images. The third drop-down list is shown, containing the images uploaded earlier in the chapter. Alright, so this is under products create. So I guess it's time for truth here. Let's save this. We are at our create, so let's view this in the browser and see what it looks like. Alright, looks good so far. There we go. Okay, looking pretty good as far as I can tell. It looks like what's on figure 621. Alright, this has brought us to 24 minutes, which again is kind of an optimal point for stopping. So I'm going to stop the run. And when I come back, sorry, I was watching trying to entertain myself before I started. When we come back, we'll pick it up on page 148. And on page 148, we'll be discussing using the HTTP post version of the product controller's create method, manual model binding with a view model. So I'll pick it up there in just a few minutes.